Sometimes competitions, if you approach them the wrong way, become very toxic for a team and an organization, because then it becomes about me and not about the team. So the hardest thing is, how do I make it about the team and then enjoy it in a QB room when I'm competing with the guys? And the biggest thing is having great conversations with Mitch and Tyler, us realizing we're in this together, though that we are competing from the outside, who's going to be the starter, who's going to be the backup, whatever. That's real. We don't have to, like, you sit over there, I sit over here. We're not talking until this is done. No, like, let's talk through, how can we make this offense better? How can we do that? And whoever's the best person at executing this offense that can help the Chicago Bears win games and lead this team should be the starter, and then the other guys will be there to support them. And if for some reason that starter gets hurt, then the guy who's behind him will go in and he will lead the team, and then the other guy. That's how the best teams play. That's how the best teams work.
Cheers, Bears fans! You just heard Nick Foles, and you saw him too, Nick Foles talking about the right way and wrong way to hold a competition within a team. My name is Aldo Gandia, and thank you for joining us for this show that we are calling Not 100 Proof, and we'll talk about that later in the show. But first, for the next hour or so, we're going to talk about football, and we're going to do it with these gentlemen here. They are, let me get them up on the screen, Zach Pearson, and there he is, Cam Ellis. Cam Ellis of NBC Sports Chicago and Zach Pearson of the Bear Report. Guys, how you doing this morning?
Doing well. Good.
Excellent.
Doing good.
Excellent. Busy week over at Halas Hall. Lots of news, and it started with what I thought was a very impressive press conference to detail all of the things that are going on at Halas Hall in terms of protecting the players from COVID-19. It started with Andre Tucker, the head of training, talking about the protocols they've put in place, safety measures, and so forth. Zach, I know that you were a part of that press conference. What was your overall reaction to what happened?
Yeah, listening to their protocols and how they're going about things in this uncertain time, I was pretty impressed. I mean, I think the Bears have a really good plan in place for their players as they all start to make their way to Halas Hall. And to me, it's just that they kind of get it. They understand how big this is. They understand, they have to essentially, control what they can and not allow an outbreak at Halas Hall. When it comes down to it, it's going to be on the players. I mean, they're going to have to trust the players outside of Halas Hall to be smart about things. Ask themselves, should I really be going to the grocery store? Should I really be going out to this place to eat? Things like that. So I think Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, and Andre Tucker all did a really good job of explaining, their protocols and what the Bears are doing. And I was actually very impressed with how they and what they have in place.
Cam, tell me your thoughts, please.
The thoroughness of it is impressive. I had to write out for an article afterwards just how many different steps there were, and I got to like 15 before I was even like scratching for content. So there is a lot of stuff involved. There are a lot of steps involved. It doesn't feel like it doesn't look like people are going to slip through the cracks. That being said, I will believe that a non-bubble system works when it works. Like we just haven't seen one work yet. In fact, the only example we have is very much not working at the moment. So I'm a little skeptical about how this is all going to work. With that being said, the Bears did a good job of putting a process in place that they can be proud of, because it is, like Zach said, it's really extensive. I mean, it's going to take guys 20, 30 minutes to get into Halas Hall from the time they leave the car. So, and that's not just us walking from the parking lot either. So it's extensive, but let's see how this works.
Let's listen to Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy talk about what they've done over at Halas Hall.
Yeah, I think, we're all realistic about the obstacles and the challenges that we have ahead of us. And I think, I look at, Matt and I as leaders and just communicating and educating our staff and our players on the challenges ahead. I mean, our head's not in the sand. I mean, it's going to be hard. And I think, and also, Hub, with that, being sensitive to everyone's outlook. Like, I think every individual can look at this a little different, and being sensitive and respectful of that. And for us, it really comes down to more about actions than words. So I'm really excited when our veterans get here, Hub, and they walk in the building and they see everything we've done, because I truly believe, we've gone above and beyond, and they're going to feel that when they get here. I really believe we have the best setup in the NFL in regards to how we're handling this. And then we know, there's going to be challenges, and we're going to have to adapt, as Matt just said. These are uncertain times, but I think I know it's a great strength of coaches, just the ability to adapt when things are happening real time, and that's what we'll do. But I just want to stress what we've done with our facility. And again, we have an advantage just with our square footage, and then just being creative with how we've set up all of our rooms and how we've spaced out. And there's been a lot of hands on deck with making that happen.
It's almost a challenge, right? It's a creativity deal. What are you given in regards to what we have here at Halas Hall, and how do you make it work so that it's the best thing for everybody that's here? So how do we do that? And there were so many people behind the scenes, along with myself, Ryan, and Andre, so many other people that were a part of this process. And when Ryan says that about us being what we feel is one of the top teams in the league at providing for our players and everybody in these tiers, there was a lot of work that went into that, and creativity. And now with that comes some differences. So where players are in their rooms, different. There's a little bit of transition time. So can that frustrate players when you have to walk across that walkway from Walter Payton Center to Halas Hall 3 times a day? Possibly. But then what do we need to do with the schedule? We need to open that up a little bit so there's no stress, because they feel like they have to get from one point to the other. So there's going to be adjustments within the schedule. But I can tell you this, when the players get here, and because we've already heard it from our rookies, they will feel very, very good with what they're coming into here in Chicago at Halas Hall.
Have you guys, will you guys soon be able to visit the facilities and report on what you're seeing?
I imagine so. I think it will be at least another 2 weeks. I don't know. Does that sound about right, Cam?
Yeah, I think it's like I want to say the 17th, maybe a little earlier. I think there's still some confusion on who's going to be at camp for the practices that aren't padded. I think it sounds like the sort of as normal, quote unquote, as a training camp coverage as we're going to get are going to be those 2-3 weeks when they're in shells or pads or whatever it may be. But it's going to be for like another 2 weeks at the earliest, I think.
Yeah. Over at bears.com, chicagobears.com, they've posted a number of pictures to help us visualize what the setup is. And they are absolutely right. The cavernous space there at Halas Hall is going to really work at keeping people 6 feet apart. Over in the training facilities, they've meticulously set up things. Players have assigned seating. We have a free ad here for the folks. And we have, there's the weight room, and every station has its own sanitation process. I think these are the locker rooms. Can you guys help me out with that? I wasn't quite sure. Anybody know?
So that's the entryway into Halas, the players' entryway. The newly, I guess they made it before last season. You walk right from I don't, but players walk right from that into, that's a pool, right from that into the locker room or into the facilities, I think.
That is really cool looking. Yeah. It's like heading into a strip club in Vegas with the Chicago Bears theme.
There's music blasting there too in that hallway.
Yeah.
Wow. Pretty cool. Very cool. There's another ad for, in fact, I'm wearing some of that authentic gear. There's the swimming pool again, steps taken to make sure that people are practicing proper distance. Meeting rooms with assigned seating and also capacity numbers. So I was thoroughly impressed with Andre Tucker's presentation, guys. Cam, what did you think about what what Andre shared with us?
Yeah, I think you're right. It was very impressive. So basically, if you don't know, what will happen briefly is that players wake up. Then right then they're they have to take their temperature twice. If it is under 100.4, they're good to go. Then they go to Halas, where they are tested. The tests, I believe it's in Wisconsin, is the processing facility. So they're expecting 24-hour turnaround on results. From there, you go into your specific entryway into the building, where there's plenty of PPE and hand sanitizer and all that. And then after that, you have to go get your tracing device, I guess. It looks like kind of like a wristwatch. And that's for if there are positive tests, it can tell you what devices it was near and for how long, so you can sort of contact trace that. So there are a lot of steps in the process. This will help in the case that someone gets into Halas Hall with coronavirus, because they'll be able to pinpoint it almost pretty quickly and pinpoint who they're around quickly. Again, like I said, nothing's fail safe, I think, in this. But the Bears, what Andre Tucker was talking about, they do seem to have a pretty good handle on their process and what they're going to do about it.
Let's go to Mitchell Trubisky. He was asked about if what's happening with baseball has given him concerns about possibly contacting COVID-19 during the workouts and upcoming season.
It is concerning. Health and safety and family is number one. So it would be concerning not to have a season, but I think people's health and being safe is definitely more important. So first things first, you just got to make sure everyone's healthy and taking the safe precautions. And I think we're doing a great job. Everyone just wearing masks and spacing out. But we want to have a season, but if it's not safe, we just got to get to a place to where it is safe, so we can have one.
And then there were rumors circulating around that Nick Foles was going to opt out of the season. I think somebody was speculating on that, given his personal situation. Let's listen to Nick Foles' reaction when he was asked about that.
There was never a discussion about opting out. But, when that came out, you have those discussions about, different things. And I respect everyone who is. I get it. I have a 7-week-old son. My wife and I, went through a miscarriage last year. We have a 3-year-old daughter. So, you have to weigh those different things. But it was one of those things where my wife and I both felt great, pursuing being in Chicago and being here. And after being at the facility and seeing how much care they've put into everything, it really is amazing how safe they make us feel here, how everything's separated. Obviously, there's going to be different times as athletes that our interactions become closer because of football, but whenever we have an opportunity to separate, we are. And, it's been really impressive to see what the Bears have in place for us. And you can tell a lot of people put a lot of time and effort in making the athletes and everyone who works here feel safe.
Zach, you're probably going to be asking a lot of football players questions like, have you considered opting out? What are your concerns for the season? And personally, what are your concerns too, as you interact at Halas Hall, or I know there's going to be a lot of social distancing and a lot of your work is going to be done via Zoom, but there just has to be concerns all over the place from A to Z.
Yeah, it is a little concerning. The thing is, we won't be allowed inside Halas Hall, the actual physical building, at least to start off when we do report to training camp. It's just pretty much going to be social distancing on the practice field, watching them. So kind of curious how that's going to work, because in previous years, training camp, they kind of bundle you all in one little bleacher section and you're kind of on top of each other sometimes. So I think it'll be interesting to see exactly, how many people they let in, who they let in. Will be the same people every day? Will we have to get tested? Will our temperature be taken? But looking at baseball, yeah, it's a big risk, because you see, you'd think baseball would be one of the easier sports to do outside of the travel and the non-bubble, because they are so spread apart on the field. But it goes back to, are the players going to be responsible? The players going to be the ones that are taking the precautions? Because like Cam said, the Bears are doing pretty much everything they can to kind of control in a way. But as Cam said, I mean, so far the only non-bubble example we have hasn't been working out. I'd be curious to hear some more players on, whether or not they decided or had any talks of opting out or how close they actually were. I didn't really believe the Nick Foles one at first. I mean, it was one of those things where kind of this, Twitter just kind of went up in flames. Everyone was speculating. People were, oh, yes, no. It was a wild couple hours, I'd say. What was it, like Thursday or Wednesday when that rumor came out? But, listening to those two, I think the concerns are legit for them. I don't blame them at all. I mean, it doesn't seem like as a country or anywhere we have this really under control. So I'd be a little worried as well going into training camp.
And big news this week was Eddie Goldman opting out, and Pace commented on that.
I think, specifically with Eddie Goldman, I think you just recognize that this is personal for everyone, and you're just very respectful and supportive of that decision. And so, both Matt and I, talked to Eddie, we relayed that to Eddie, and, Eddie's an important part of our team and our family, and we're going to welcome him back at the appropriate time. So I think you're just really supportive of these individual choices when a player makes that.
I'm not sure why that explosion was there at the end, but it'll probably to wake me up. But Cam, there was further news released about Eddie Goldman, and apparently he has a pre-existing condition that helped motivate him to take the opt-out. What can you share with us about that?
I had not seen previous news about that. So this is news to me. So I wish I had a better answer for you. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. He's a big guy. I mean, there's inherent risk, even more so for even healthy players at that level. And quite frankly, being at that level, these are big athletic guys, and it's not really natural to even be at that weight. I forget. I was listening to someone talking about how. Look at Kyle Long. The second he stopped playing NFL football, he dropped 60, 70 pounds. Like it is an active work in progress for these guys to, be clinically obese for their position. And being clinically obese is not where you want to be when there's a virus that is affecting those people, disproportionately. So I think you're going to see this from a lot of the bigger guys in the NFL if you haven't already. It doesn't surprise me. People shouldn't really have anything to say about it besides it's his decision and we respect it. But yeah, it sucks for them on the field just because of how immensely talented he is. But at the end of the day, it makes all the sense in the world for him. This is the right decision, and there's no real debating it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the report that I saw was actually, it was weird because it was buried in the middle of a Chicago Tribune report on Eddie Goldman's decision to opt out, that it was related to a medical concern and that he was high risk. So more details on that, I'm sure will be available soon. Although there are certain protocols in place with the players union to kind of guard about too much information being released. So we'll keep on top of that and share that with our audience. Now, I asked Danny Shimon, who is the co-host of Draft on Tap and studies film left and right, what the impact was of Eddie Goldman not playing the 2020 season.
That loss is going to be huge for the Bears. Goldman was a guy that was underappreciated along that front seven of the Bears. He's a guy that did, a lot of the dirty work, if you will, whether it's, taking up double teams, occupying space, creating free lanes for the linebackers like Danny Trevathan and Roquan Smith to use their speed and athletic ability to get to ball carriers, have clear path to those ball carriers. He's a guy that when asked, he was, a guy that could push the pocket. He can collapse the pocket by using his, his athletic ability, his power to get offensive linemen back on their heels and into the quarterback's lap. So I think him being gone is going to be a huge loss.
And then I want to add to that, Greg Gabriel, who co-hosts a show here on the network, Gabriel and Schuster Talk Bears. He talked to me about Eddie Goldman's the loss of Eddie Goldman to this team.
It obviously hurts the run defense. He was not a key part of the nickel package when they basically go with 2 interior linemen and then, your 2 outside edge guys, and you're playing, basically a 4-2-5 or even a dime defense. But it is going to harm the run defense. They're going to have to find a way to fix that.
Zach, I actually went over to Pro Football Reference and took a look at the snap counts for Eddie Goldman. He typically plays a little over 50% of the snaps on the team. And so in some games as low as 40%, in some games closer to 60%. So your thoughts on the impact of not having Eddie Goldman, and now with John Jenkins on the reserve COVID-19 list, which means that he could be gone for who knows, a couple of weeks or much longer.
Yeah, listening to that first clip, that sounds a lot like Akeem Hicks too. When Hicks was out last season, it was a big impact on the Bears, front seven. It just felt like teams just kind of went right up the middle against the Bears and kind of targeted where Hicks was supposed to be. I think it's gonna be a similar impact this year with, without Goldman. I mean, he is a guy, he eats up blocks on the inside, frees up, Danny Trevathan and Roquan Smith. It's a big loss in my eyes. And hear the news that John Jenkins placed on the COVID-19 and reserved list a few days later. I mean, that's an even bigger hit now, because now your defensive line rotation's down to Hicks, Roy Robertson Harris, Bilal Nichols, Brent Urban, and then you have a couple undrafted free agents who maybe now they have a better chance of making the team. I think the Bears, are going to have to go out and maybe bring in a veteran. Ryan Pace kind of alluded to it and didn't really rule it out. The problem is, there's really no protocol to get any of these free agents into your building right now. Like, the NFL really doesn't have a plan in place for that. And how much do you trust, bringing in a guy who's been, sitting in wherever for the past 4 or 5 months into your building and getting all the testing and all that stuff done? I think until the NFL kind of, has maybe protocol on that, I think the Bears will wait. There are some options out there, and the guy I really like is Snacks Harrison, who played in Detroit the past 2 seasons. I think he's one of the better run stoppers in this league, because I think it's going to be that area where you're going to see, Goldman's loss impacting the most is our team's going to start running up the middle against the Bears. Can they gash them without Goldman? That'd be my biggest concern without Goldman in there.
Yeah, you wrote about over at Bear Report. You wrote about some of the other options. Let me see if I can call it up on my screen here. Besides Snacks, you listed Mike Daniels, the former Green Bay Packer. You've also listed Marcel Darius. He's a free agent. Timmy Jernigan, D'Amato Pico, who's got the largest ass I've ever seen on a human being. It's enormous. But some interesting names, to say the least, and it was interesting, too, that during the press conference, I think I'll play the clip later, Matt Nagy said that it was really important this season for Ryan Pace to and his team to take a close look at the waiver wire, because there are going to be some players who are going to be cut in this next period when you got to get rosters down to 80. I'm not sure how far along teams are with that process, but that also that there are going to be some young players with talent who are going to be cut. And so therefore all of that pre-scouting leading up to the draft is going to really come in important, and what they hear on the street regarding those players and how they've conducted themselves during the offseason. So there are options there, but it is concerning right now that middle of the line and the run defense is going to be really hurt by that, and that the inside linebackers may suffer as a result of that, especially if Roquan Smith is still out partying on yachts and with porn stars and stuff like that. So that's an issue. Wouldn't you say, Cam?
It was not a great, it's not a great look, I would say. We're all young. We all make our choices. Not all of them are good. But no, it was not a great look. I will admit that. It was, there are better things to Instagram at this time, I would imagine.
Yeah. And when you say we're all young, you're definitely not including me on that.
At one point, I assume.
Another issue regarding what the COVID situation is doing is with player contract. And so I contacted Chad Forbes, who is a really good with studying numbers and talking about that. He posted a couple of tweets that got my interest. So I contacted him and asked him to help us understand how COVID-19 is impacting player contracts.
If a player decides to opt out, they get a $175,000 advance unless they have pre-existing conditions that warrant them opting out. So if Nate Solder opted out, he'll get $350,000. He's a tackle for the New York Giants because he had testicular cancer back in 2016. So if you don't qualify as a high-risk individual, you get a $175,000 cash advance. Your contract pushes to 2021, and that amount is just deducted from your base salary for the next season. So you're kind of just borrowing from what you'll make in the next upcoming season when you're back in the fold.
On your Twitter account, you talked about how certain players could consider opting out for financial reasons because their contracts would actually work against them if the season was called off. And certain players who, because they have guaranteed contracts, will probably dedicate themselves to playing the entire season if the COVID-19 doesn't interrupt it. Can you kind of take us through that scenario? You're much better at it than I could ever be.
The way it works is that in your contract, there's guarantees contained. And there's base salary, there's bonuses, there's a lot of different ways that teams pay players. So for somebody like Bobby Massey now, his paragraph 5, so just his salary is $6.9 million for the upcoming season. Now it turns out that money is guaranteed. So if the season gets stopped for some reason, whatever's remaining of that guarantee would just get pushed to 2021. Now it's different for Buster Skrine. He's guaranteed $2 million of his $4.65 base salary. He's going to basically get paid $290,000 per game. So if the season stops for some reason and Buster Skrine doesn't reach, say he gets to 7 games, so he'd make his $2 million, but the other 2.65 would disappear. So for certain guys, it makes sense to opt out if their base salary is not guaranteed, is guaranteed for, I guess you would say, injury, but not for ability, skill. Mm-hmm. So it's just a really complicated kind of formula that agents are managing right now and saying, how do I ensure that my client gets the, I guess, best benefit of making, the most amount of money, which is what their goal is.
It truly is complicated. I understood every other word that he said there. I asked them also about when is the opt-out date, because it's always seems to be moving further and further back. And so the latest I heard was August 5th, the middle of the week. So there could still be players who, at the advice of their agents, will be told, you know what, it's better if you just take the money now, the opt-out money, and sit out the season. So that's going to be a high priority situation for the Bears brass to keep an eye on and try to keep this roster, particularly the nucleus of the players, intact. Wouldn't you say, Cam?
Yeah, I mean it's tough. I mean it sounds almost lazy because we just say it's tough about everything, but everything's tough right now. Like that's just the way it is. The Bears are going to be up against it. They're in a normal world, their cap situation would not be great, but it would be manageable. And I think, if the Pat Mahomes and Chris Jones contracts on back-to-back days or whatever it was shows that maybe cap management's a little more fluid than I think the conversation still sort of dictates right now. And Ryan Pace has always shown the ability to sort of wiggle his way out of some tricky cap situations. But the fact of the matter is the Bears have a lot of money on the table right now, and they have a lot of money already committed to guys that's not coming back. So if there's significant cap issues this year, if the cap drops a lot, which Pace sort of alluded to, next year they're going to be in some trouble. I think that they're a wealthy organization that has the means to figure things out, but they are, if there's a significant drop next season, the Bears are going to have to make some moves that aren't going to be super popular, I think.
Yeah, and you used the word tough. One of the things about this Chicago Bears team that we really wanted to see is a toughening of the physical aspects of the football team. And now with very limited preseason training, Matt Nagy was asked about that.
So year 2018, we talked about getting calloused. We were physical, right? We got after it pretty good live in training camp. Last year we did some live, but we went the other way, right? And we not playing a lot of the starters in the preseason. I told you at the end of the year that I didn't think, looking back, that was a good decision. So had no clue that this was going to play out like this with no preseason games. Was excited and looking forward to getting these guys going, not just for the competition, but also for the callus and to get back to that. So we got to create that now. We got to find ways to do it. We're going to. We have a plan. And there's going to be live. There's going to be tackling. We're going to be able to evaluate. It's just not going to be on TV in front of a bunch of people at Soldier Field all the time. So, or wherever we're playing preseason. So, but it's got to be smart, because this ramp up period with these players, not knowing where they've been 100% and what they've been doing, that's where I think the league and the Players Association have done a really good job at making sure that when they get in here, we ramp up the right way. Because as we all know as head coaches, we want to protect these players and be smart. It's very important that the hamstring injuries, the soft tissue injuries, all of those are a whole separate issue from COVID. So we want to be smart in this process, but there's the balance of having that physicality that we're going to freaking get after it in this training camp. So mindset wise, when we're going and we strap it up and go live and we hit and we tackle, there's going to be a mindset that we're going to be a tough football team.
Zach, this is a interesting challenge that this football team has, and all NFL teams do. If you're going to increase the physical aspects of things during camp and the limited workout, you've also got to be very concerned about injuries with shorter rosters and so forth. Hell of a challenge ahead for Matt Nagy and the Bears, huh?
Yeah, and I think that was a big thing last season was, he didn't want to play his starters because of fear of an injury. If someone goes out and tears their ACL in preseason week 1 or 2, he's pretty much gone for the season. He did admit the mistake last season. I know a lot of fans were upset that virtually no starters played any preseason games last year. And, at the NFL scouting combine, he kind of revealed and admitted his mistake for the first time, saying, yeah, we plan on playing all the starters, or most of the starters at least. You weren't going to see Khalil Mack anyway, but, more starters this year. Now, that plan's just kind of pretty much gone through the door, and it's going to be brutal, because this is the year that, for the first time since 2007, the Bears have an actual quarterback competition, and it's all going to have to be judged in practice in those drills. Now, the good thing about that is I think those drills are going to be amped up. Typically with those preseason drills, the scrimmages, the 7-on-7s are the ones that all the fans like and are the more amped up ones. I think this year we're going to see a lot more of that. We're going to see Nick Foles with the first team. We're going to see Mitchell Trubisky with the first team. I don't know there'll be many reps with Tyler Bray for the first team, but I guess that's the good news, is you'll actually get to see both quarterbacks in amped up situations going up against that first team defense. And you're right. They're going to have to make the most of what they have. It's not easy. There's still going to be that risk of injuries. But at this point, with the no preseason games, I don't know what else they can do.
Yeah, and the rookie class is in for a special challenge, and this is the Bears Brain Trust talking about that.
If there's one season to know the playbook inside out, it's 2020. And so they don't have preseason games to go out there and make plays and show us a play or two that we see. They don't have that now. So now they're going to have to do it in practice. Well, the one way to handle that is to understand that, again, if you try to do too much, or if we paralyze them mentally because we're giving them too much that they can't think, if they're thinking on that field, that's our fault as coaches. We have to be able to evaluate. And they're just the way it is right now with these teams. There's going to be, with no preseason games, there's going to be players that get cut that probably shouldn't get cut, and that's where I think Ryan and our personnel staff has a really big challenge ahead of them, along with the other ones in the league, to find who those guys are. And hopefully we're on the end of keeping the right ones and not getting rid of them. But it's going to be harder for us. But we feel prepared for it. And I think right now, from what our rookies have shown us in the last couple of days in these walkthroughs, I've come away pretty impressed with the way that they've taken the Zoom meetings and transferred them to the football field.
It's kind of odd that he threw that in the middle of what he's talking about, that Ryan Pace has to look at other rosters and stuff. I'm not, we do a lot of micro analysis of what the Bears brass and players say at press conferences, and I'm going to do that here. It almost sounded that it was either a warning to players, these rookies, hey, if you don't get your shit together, there are other guys that the GM is looking for, or it could be that Ryan Pace, or excuse me, Matt Nagy told Ryan Pace, yeah, some of these guys don't look that good, so get to work, bro. So what do you think, Cam?
Yeah, I think it's one of the more fascinating parts of what the press conference entailed. In fact, it was a pretty layered answer, because on one aspect you have, first of all, I think this is talking about the cornerbacks. Cole Kmet's going to start because they don't have anyone else. And whether or not he's ready, I think is sort of not a question at this point. They need him to start. I think this sort of points to Kevin Tolliver. I think a lot of people wanted Jalen Johnson being the starter off the bat, and I don't know how realistic that is, especially after listening to what Pace and Nagy said. It's just, I mean, I asked Nagy, and he said that rookies may get limited reps. So I think that this really points to how little they're going to have. Some of these positional competitions that people were really excited for may not actually happen. There's not time. They don't have the time or the means to really flesh out every single competition that they wanted to, because that's just not how it is this year. I sort of go back and forth. I don't know how much of a shot it was. I think Nagy. I think Nagy. I don't know if Nagy takes shots at players through media. I don't know if that's his shtick. It screamed to me about cornerbacks. I just kept reading. Kevin Tolliver is going to be the starter at least in week one. I don't know, Zach. I don't know where you fell on it, but I thought it was actually kind of a more honest answer, an honest 4 or 5 minutes than other ones might have been.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, without the preseason games, you're very limited with rookies, and then take away the OTAs, the mini camps. Realistically, yeah, Kmet's probably the one that's going to start. I put Jalen Johnson behind him second, but I don't think he's going to start till later on down the road. I think they'll just go with they know what they have in Kevin Tolliver. Let's roll him out there and see what we got. And if he struggles, maybe we'll bring Jalen Johnson along. Darnell Mooney pretty much wasn't a good candidate to start right away. I think he's a guy that you look at, maybe Ted Ginn kind of takes under his wing and he learns in week one, or not week one, I'm sorry, throughout the season, and then kind of eases in. But yeah, I mean, Kmet's going to be the guy. He's going to start. They're going to interchange him with Demetrius Harris and Jimmy Graham. There's going to be more 12 personnel this season, which I'm actually more excited for in terms of the Bears offense, because we've barely even seen it at all the past 2 years. Yeah, and then you look at this 2 7th-rounders, and those are just depth mode. Those are guys that you hope you catch lightning in a bottle, and they can replace Bobby Massey, Charles Leno. Maybe one slots in at right guard eventually down the line. But I'd have to agree with Cam. I think that really does scream cornerback, and you go with Kevin Tolliver to start, because outside of that, I mean, safety, there's no rookie to contend, and as much as they want to say it's a competition, I think it's Tayshon Gibson's to lose. So I think that was pretty much the one big position battle that I took away from that.
Which I will say is, I think, a under-discussed part of the quarterback competition is that if there's a silver lining here, it's that it's not like the Bears are trotting out, a highly touted rookie who's never played NFL football before, and oh crap, he's got to figure out how to run an NFL offense without any games. And you can slander Trubisky all you want if that's what you're going to want to do. But he's played NFL football before. Both of these guys know NFL offenses and know NFL tempos and know how to operate an NFL football game. And I think that does actually, if there's going to be a competition, that is super useful, because otherwise you're hoping some guy just knows that, you hope you have Pat Mahomes and you don't. If there's one silver lining, a surprise Bears, you don't have Pat Mahomes. If there's one silver lining, I think to the quarterback thing, I think that sort of speaks to that.
Yeah, and one of the positions that I've been concerned about for the last few months since after the draft and the Bears not making any significant free agent acquisitions is the running back position. And I think it was Hub Arkish during the call kind of challenged Ryan Pace on that. And Pace is not as concerned as I am.
I don't feel that way about the running back room. I feel like with David, we're going to continue to see him progress, and we're really happy with the way he performed last year and definitely arrow up. And Tariq, everything that we can gather as far as his mental mindset right now and his approach to this season, we're excited about Tariq Cohen and his approach. We factor in Ryan All, who we like, who's grown here in our organization. So I'm excited about our running back room, and I think there are there's obviously some new wrinkles this season in regards to Matt and his staff and what they'll do. And so I would disagree. I think it's a talented room, and we like our depth in that room.
What do you guys think? You think there's some depth concerns? Zach first.
Yeah. I actually wrote on this right when he said that quote. He's pretty happy with it. I was like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you can. And that's nothing against like David Montgomery. I think David Montgomery quietly had a really good rookie year. I think when you look at the struggles of the Bears' offense and the run game as a whole, people are like, oh, that's disappointing. I mean, he was second among rookies in rushing yards and touchdowns, only to Josh Jacobs last season. So I think Montgomery is starting to come around. I think he'll have a big second year. I think the key is going to be Tariq Cohen because he really struggled running the football last season. I mean, he had problems going east to west when he should have been going north to south, and he admitted it on Twitter multiple times this offseason. So if you get a good run game with Montgomery, you can allow Cohen to kind of do what Matt Nagy wants to do with him. Behind that, I mean, Ryan Nall, 2 carries for 8 yards. I don't think he should feel safe about his third running back job. And I was actually very intrigued by Artavius Pierce out of Oregon State and Napoleon Maxwell. I think he's like FIU. But now Pierce is on the COVID-19 list. So it looks like right now, as it stands, it's going to be Maxwell against Nall. But I was kind of shocked they didn't really take maybe a chance on a veteran. You look at a guy like Jeremy Hill just signed in Oakland on a cheap 1-year deal. I don't know if he's your answer, but I mean, I think at this point, more bodies in the running back room is probably better than what they have.
So I think that's right. I think the thing is that it just doesn't really matter. Like, Matt Nagy's not going to run the ball.
Yeah.
Like, that's just life. Like, we just have to get used to that. And they could definitely be better. And I actually do think Juan Castillo will be good for David Montgomery, because if you sort of look back at Juan Castillo's history, the offensive line play has not been really great at times. They're not great, but it's sort of all over the map in terms of effectiveness. But he's always really gotten the best out of feature backs. And so I think that bodes really well for David Montgomery just schematically. I just don't think the Bears are really going to worry about having a guy hit 1,000 yards on the ground. I think it's just not a part of their offensive identity. They could certainly mix in the run game to help augment their passing game better. I think there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I think they could definitely try play action a little better. I think they could try different schemes. I think they were actually sort of successful running the ball on early downs last year, which sort of is the silver lining. But I think Bears fans just you're not going to have this power rush system that you think. You're not going to have this 2-back great system. Tariq Cohen only got like 60 rushes last year. Like, that's not really a 2-back system. So if you're talking in a vacuum about running games, yeah, the Bears were bad at it and they could get better at it. I just don't think it's a priority for them. And I think they're going to be okay with sort of a mid-tier rushing game if it can augment whoever's at quarterback.
And to Cam's point, I mean, yeah, look, David Montgomery probably gets 1,000 yards if Matt Nagy doesn't go away from the run. And he had those 4 games where it was like, he just seemingly went away from the run completely. And
quite literally, like that one game, like it was like 7 rushes or whatever.
Yeah. And it was what? It was like a 1-score game. I think it was the entire game. And then you look at the Chargers game too, where they had Mitch Trubisky throwing up 14 and he turns it over on back-to-back possessions. So yeah, I'm with Cam. I mean, you look at previous Bears teams and it's like, get off the bus running. And this one's just different. It's running back to them is kind of a bonus. Anything they get on the ground is just a complete bonus to them. They're going to try to get it done through the air. And I think that's why maybe they didn't bring anyone in. Maybe they're like, maybe they really are truly comfortable with the position, whether that's right or wrong. I mean, that's just how they feel and how they're going to go with it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely wrong. And I trust me on this, there will be a veteran signed on the team soon as one becomes available that they can, match up in terms of needs, player capabilities, contract, and so forth. They will sign. I don't think they're going to go through training camp without a veteran. You just cannot risk going through the season with a backup running back team that has such inexperience. And we know, of course, that Tariq Cohen has limitations as a back. So I want to turn now to the quarterback situation, the huge topic of this team and this quarterback battle between Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles. Trubisky was asked about whether he's getting motivation from all the criticism that he has faced.
For me, it's very motivating. I mean, you're always going to have people writing you off, and it's just got to light a fire underneath you, which it has for me. And I'm just trying to prove everybody wrong and prove my teammates right. So there's just so much hard work that goes into it. And for people to write you off, I mean, that it definitely motivates you in a way that you just want to go out there and play as best as you possibly can. So I'm definitely fired up, and you got to make it happen.
Doesn't sound too fired up to me. I got to tell you. Now, there's a contrast here in how the quarterbacks address the media. Listen to Nick Foles' approach to the quarterback competition and how his mindset is.
I think the big thing is just don't focus on winning. I'd say the big thing is focus on getting to be myself out on there on the field, and when a play is called, playing to the best of my ability. The beautiful thing is there's a lot of similarities in this offense from my Philly offense. So I feel right back at home, whether it's the run game, the pass game, there are similarities to where, it's been a year since I was sort of in that offense, but it's nice to like have the verbiage and have this feel and understand why we're doing it. This is how we do it. This is the history, because the history of the Philly offense came from KC. We evolved it in Philly, but Coach Nagy brought the KC offense here, and it's become the Bears offense. So for me, it's not, a lot of people talk about the quarterback competition. It's just like I always say, everyone goes in a game wanting to win a game. Saying you want to win a game doesn't do anything. You have to do the little things each and every day. Whether it's your workout, whether it's your pre-practice routine, whether it's just when Nagy calls a play in practice, just executing that play. If it's checking it down to the running back, check it down to the running back. The biggest problem is we watch the other guy and he makes a big throw and you think to yourself, oh man, now I got to throw a big throw. And then you don't even read the play out. And that's just this is going on year 9 and it's been a crazy career and it just keeps getting crazier. I'm just going out there, and if I'm working the second team, third team, first team, like, let's just play ball, man. I love this offense. I love the verbiage. I've been in this offense. I know what I can do in this offense. But all that stuff gives me is wisdom. Wisdom to go out there and help my teammates, to help Mitch, to help Tyler. I'm not keeping secrets from Mitch. Like, I want to help Mitch. So if there's a play that I've ran a lot and I know a lot, I'm going to give him that information, just like, I know he will with me, because we're working to help each other. And, when he makes a great throw, I'm going to be right there to, slap him a 5, and then they'll probably have to like sanitize our hands, but I'm going to do it. That's part of this thing it is a competition, but we're all on the same team. So we're going to push each other every day, but there's got to be a healthy way to do it.
Now, what a player says in front of a camera and what he does on the football field are two totally different things. We much prefer him doing excellent things on the football field. But I got to tell you, I was really impressed with the words shared there by Nick Foles and throughout the entire press conference late last week. Zach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the one quote that really stood out to me in his press conference was when he was talking about how he feels at home already. He just got here like a couple weeks ago, I believe it was, and already feels like at home. And he's referencing the offense, obviously, and his connections with Bill Lazor and John DeFilippo and Matt Nagy. To me, I mean, that's, you listen to Foles, and it's a guy you just know. I mean, he really doesn't have much to lose. If he doesn't win the quarterback job, I think he has a feeling that he knows he's going to play at some point, because how much do you really trust Mitchell Trubisky if he does win the job to play well from week 1 to week 17? I don't think that's realistic. I think at some point we're going to see both quarterbacks. Then you listen to Mitch Trubisky, and it's a guy who, we've talked to, I believe it's been 3 times so far this offseason, 2 or 3 times. And the same thing he keeps saying is, I'm motivated. I'm out there, and I know this is my last chance. And to me, I like hearing that. Yeah, he's motivated. He's out there working with the guys in the offseason. But, I mean, like you guys said, it's talk right now. It has to translate over to the football field. I mean, if he could be as motivated as he wants, but if he doesn't fix anything in his game, and we see what we saw last year, I mean, it's over for him. So it's 2 quarterbacks for me with 2 different mindsets. I think Foles is more relaxed. I think kind of Foles knows in his back pocket that maybe with limited offseason, no preseason, that his familiarity with this offense and the coaching staff might give him the upper hand in this battle. I know Matt Nagy said that Foles is probably at a disadvantage not being here for OTAs. I don't know how much of a disadvantage that is in terms of him, knowing the offense and knowing most of the verbiage. So it was interesting to hear their 2 different mindsets. And I imagine that's probably going to be the same mindsets we're going to carry for most of training camp.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, one is a guy who lost his job, and one is a guy who's coming to take his job. I'm not overly surprised that the tone is different. Yeah, I mean, I've sort of empathized with Mitch this entire time because no one gets to be an NFL quarterback. It is the dream, and here's a guy who has been groomed for being an NFL quarterback for his entire athletic career, and basically got there, and to this point has come up 10% short. Very few people can empathize with what that must feel like. So I get why he sort of would not be able to hide disappointment, just because, I mean, it is a disappointment at a level I certainly don't know. I don't know if you guys were quarterbacks at any point in your life. I don't know. So I get it. I don't really expect much from these Zoom conferences. It's just the way it is. There's such a distance between us and the athletes that the personal aspect of it does sort of fade away. And Nick Foles, to his credit, was very candid about a lot of stuff, and that was nice. And Mitch, to his credit, was candid about how he felt. But they're like Zach said, this is all sort of lip service. It's going to keep being lip service until we start throwing passes. And I think there is some value in dissecting lip service just because that's what we have right now. But yeah, we hit a certain ceiling where, Mitch is motivated. Nick is a good guy who's going to help, but is also motivated. And what does that really mean? I don't really know. I think at a certain point, luckily pretty soon here, we're going to see what that means.
Greg Gabriel recently commented on Mitchell Trubisky on his show, Gabriel and Schuster Talk Bears.
Let's go back a year. And a year ago right now, beginning of July, middle of July last year, the majority of fans in Chicago, the media, all thought the Bears had a good chance of getting to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Mitch came off a pretty good year 1 under Matt Nagy. Not great, but he showed, you got to throw out his rookie year almost because he had poor coaching and a lousy offense. They made the changes. He did some really good things. In those big games, Mitch came up pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. In the playoff game against Philadelphia, he did everything he needed to do for the Bears to get to the NFC Championship game. He didn't miss the kick, and that was a gimme kick. Should have been a gimme kick. Yep. And so what happened in 2019? You would think there would be a progression in his play. He fell off. Now, he got hurt early with the shoulder. Was that part of it? Might have been. Part of it, there was a disconnect with the coaching staff. You look at the end of the season, Coach Nagy made 3 big changes along his offensive staff. He replaced Harry Hiestand, who's one of the most respected offensive line coaches in football. Replaced Harry. He replaced the tight end coach. He replaced Mark Helfrich as the offensive coordinator, brought in new people. Obviously, Nagy's trying to fix what was wrong. And it's not just the quarterback gets the blame no matter what, mm-hmm. but it's more than just Mitch Trubisky. It was the offense as a whole, the run game as a whole. It wasn't nearly as productive. You go back to the 2018 season when they got in the red zone, it was almost an automatic. they were scoring, and a lot of those, those hot plays that Nagy was drawing up, almost like a, sandlot football when he got inside the 5-yard line. We didn't see that last year. So what happened? And it has to be a number of things. It can't be just the play of Mitch Trubisky.
As Greg Braggs is famous for saying here at the Barroom, it's not all on Mitch, and it's not all on Mitch. It is obvious. Anyone who studies what happened in 2019 the 2019 season knows that there were breakdowns in the offensive line. The play calling was highly suspect at times. And there were just all sorts of issues, and that shoulder injury was definitely an issue. Matt Nagy was asked, how are they going to go about evaluating quarterbacks in this camp?
We need to be creative within these drills and make sure that the time that's given to us in practice, that we're using it as in competitive as much as we can with competitive periods. It's hard to do that in walkthroughs. It's hard to do that in meetings, even if they're in person. But when we get a chance to go out there, we're evaluating those quarterbacks with every single play, not just throw, but every single check that they make at the line of scrimmage. Every bit of leadership that they show in and out of the huddle, we're there watching how they react to a specific play in practice, and so that got squeezed down a little bit. But with that said, our coordinators are doing a heck of a job right now, as we sit here, of figuring out ways to maximize those competitive plays and periods, and we feel confident that we believe it'll all play itself out. It's going to be completely open, and we're just going to take it day by day.
Oh, big news also this week, at least on social media. Mitchell talking about that he's never worked on his mechanics before coming into the NFL. I was like, oh, my goodness. So let's listen to Mitch talk about his work with the quarterback guru from here in Chicago, and then we'll comment on Mitch's comments.
Hey, Mitch, you mentioned the
I included the question here because the reaction that Mitch shares during the question, again, we microanalyze everything here on these Zoom meetings and press conferences. His reaction might be telling.
Hey, Mitch, you mentioned the mechanics, and that was kind of a new thing for you this offseason. I was wondering what specifically about your mechanics did you work on, and how did you go about making those adjustments?
I'm not going to dive in specifically. I mean, hopefully it shows up on tape this year, just me having better balance in the pocket. Did a couple things with the footwork and just how I'm holding the ball and where my release is coming from and stuff like that. So it's really the first time I ever adjusted my mechanics, and I just really loved working with Jeff and how he approaches coaching the quarterback position, and how he studied the great players that have played this position and how he translates that to coaching. So I just it's been really fun. I feel like my motion is better. I feel like I'm more in balance and the ball's coming out more accurately. So I'm confident with where I'm at right now and how all that work has helped me this offseason. So I'm excited about it.
Zach, what was your reaction when he talked about not having worked on his mechanics prior to this offseason?
Man, so I tweeted that quote right after he said it, or a couple minutes after he said it, and my mentions were just on fire with quote retweets and all that. And I have to agree. I mean, I don't think it's fair to say, yeah, you can change a quarterback's mechanics in the middle of a season, especially you look in 2017. The Bears weren't going to do that. John Fox and Dow Loggins weren't going to completely change his mechanics in the middle of the year. 2018. As the clip before played, I mean, Trubisky was pretty solid. I mean, I don't think he had a great 2018 season. I think he did enough to kind of, motivate that team, get that team to where they went to. I think he could have done better. You weren't going to adjust the mechanics. Last year is kind of the time where I would have. However, I mean, the Bears, they were pretty much in that playoff race until about week 13, 14. So I don't know if it was more of Nagy and Dave Ragone not wanting to just mess with anything, or they kind of just closed the book on Mitch and just realized, hey, we can't fix him. But everyone watching, everyone covering the team, I mean, multiple people have said this. his footwork is not very good. And that was one of the big, negatives on him in his scouting report. When he throws the football, he's off balance. He's not putting his lead foot forward, and that's going to be inaccurate throws. I mean, you've seen it plenty of times over the years. Now, how much of it that's fixed? I mean, he says it's fixed. He says he feels a lot better where his arm angle, where his balance is. If that's true, I think we'll see an improved Mitchell Trubisky. Still, it goes back to, you're going to get back on the field. Can he do this while he's on the field? Can he remember as he's processing things? The other thing that we have to kind of take in here is, mechanics aren't reading a defense, and mechanics aren't making the right decision on RPO, which is something, you look at the tape last year, he made a lot of bad decisions on RPOs, and it ended up in either sacks, throwaways, or really bad decisions on interceptions, things like that. I think, Trubisky is kind of this last-ditch effort. Yeah, I need to work with, the QB coach and all this stuff. But, man, if he doesn't fix on how to read defenses and how to make the right decisions, I don't know how much it will matter.
I totally agree with you. Cam, you had a thought?
Yeah, no, I was exactly perfectly. I will say that I'm not sure if this is true. Like, I don't think this is the first time he's ever worked on mechanics. I get what he's saying in that I bet there's probably a larger emphasis on it overall than there's been in years past. But we've talked to him in last couple of years, and he's talked about, I worked on footwork at practice today, or, I worked on like shoulder stuff or whatever it may be. So I get it, and I feel sad for Zach and his mentions because I know how bad those can be. But I think maybe people jumped on this for more than it was worth, just because he said, this is the first time I've done it, which I get what that means, but I'm not entirely sure it's the first time he's ever like had a coach talk to him about mechanics and been open to it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And to clarify, what I said earlier, I agree with Cam. Like, he has talked about footwork and stuff like that. I guess when I was talking about, with the first 3 years, is not fully retooling everything and not spending, the entire off season or during the middle of the season. Because Cam's been in there, I've been in there, and he said, we've done footwork drills, we've kind of worked on balance and things like that. So I agree with Cam. I think, really, is it the first time? I think it's the first time he's actually like fully dove into it with a QB coach and stuff like that.
Yeah, I took a cheap shot at Dave Ragone saying that's coaching negligence if he hasn't worked on his quarterback with on his mechanics, and clearly that's not the case. Ragone has worked on mechanics, and somebody replied did you ever see Dave Ragone play quarterback? Do you want to learn mechanics from Dave Ragone? And I think that Mitch's what he was trying to say is that there was a much more concerted effort to work on mechanics and to work with a quarterback guru coach whose that is his specialty. And so hopefully we'll see the results. Now I want to go to Matt Nagy talking about how he's going to evaluate the new quarterback on the block, Nick Foles.
It's an absolute more of a disadvantage not having what he could have had is building the relationship, and probably more specifically is the timing with the wide receivers that you get in the OTAs, where you can run route after route after route after route. You get to see and feel how guys time up their motions. So for sure that will be a disadvantage, something that he could have had that he doesn't have. But those guys know that. He understands that. And for both of them, it's just going to be neither one of them should go out there and try to do too much. They just need to be themselves when they're out there, play football, and let the results take care of themselves. They're both really good people. It's things that we really feel good about using down the road, because that time got crunched. So, he could, Nick knows that. He's a smart guy, and but at the same time, I think he'll be hungry to get back out there and just really get on the field and try to build those relationships up that he lost.
And this is Nick Foles talking about his relationship with the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think the relationships were there. It's exciting because those were all at different walks of my NFL journey. Laser was early on in 2013. Flip was, 2017 and 2019. So we were on a Super Bowl team, and then we were on we had a crazy year last year in Jacksonville. And then Nagy was quality control in 2012, and then was my OC in 2016. And it's really fun to be with them because now I'm going on my 9th year, and, you know, every experience you have in life, you gain knowledge and wisdom, and then you're always trying to seek more. You don't ever know everything, so I'm trying to learn. I learned a new thing with protection yesterday that I hadn't heard, and I don't think anyone in the QB room had heard. It was Bill's philosophy, and I'm like, man, that's actually pretty good. It didn't make sense to me at first, but when you explained it, I get why you do it, but I've never heard it explained that way. So it's fun to have that database of information of knowing those guys and being in game situations with them. It helps too to build up, you know, speed. They've seen me in games. They know what I'm like in games. And that helps a lot.
So your thoughts, Cam, on what Foles shared in terms of his familiarity with the coaching staff? I think that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, I mean, it is. If it's not, maybe not advantage, because I think Mitch is probably pretty comfortable with the coaching staff as well, but it certainly helps him. It's an advantage in the sense that he doesn't have to play catch up, and that is so integral to this offseason. You know, I think it goes back in part to why the Bears gave up the capital they did in this year's quarterback market to get Nick Foles. I mean, there were objectively easier ways to get more talented quarterbacks this year, and they traded a 4th round and guaranteed $20+ million to Nick Foles. So I think that, and he sort of spoke to exactly why the Bears did that. So yeah, I think it helps. I think for all the, Trubisky, it's not going to matter how many gurus he sees if he's still overthrowing people. I don't think it's really going to matter how comfortable Nick Foles is with coaches from 7 years ago if he's playing like he did last year, So it goes both ways. It is objectively an advantage that Nick Foles knows the verbiage and knows the guys and sort of has all of his pals back together because that makes you comfortable. When you're comfortable, you play well. At least that's the Bears' hope. But I sort of view the Nick Foles knowing coaches in the same light as I do Mitch going to a quarterback guy, where that's good and it's all well and neat. And, quarterbacks can do all the things they want during the offseason, but let's see Nick Foles play like better than he has the last 4 or 5 years, because it's not particularly encouraging, I'd say.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. He's had really an incredible career. 2nd year in the league, he throws for 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, and then he gets more responsibility as a starter, and that doesn't help. And then he comes in to back up Carson Wentz for the Philadelphia Eagles and leads them to a Super Bowl. But he goes to Jacksonville and doesn't play well. It's been a really strange career for Carson Wentz. But I got to tell you again, I was really impressed with the words that he shared at the Zoom meeting this past week. And one of the things that he said was his kind of mindset for focusing in on what he has to do to play well.
Do that. And the advice I would say is, and this is how I'm approaching it, is alleviate all that stress. Because at the end of the day, what they decide, the way you control it is being the best you can be today. Like I said, in this next meeting, that's all I have to worry about. I have to go in there. I'm going to listen, hopefully have some great conversation. We'll talk through football. We'll talk through drops. We'll talk through reads. We'll talk through why we're doing it. I'm a big why guy. You got to tell me why. If you don't tell me why, I'm going to talk, and we're going to have a conversation until we figure out why. And so those little things add up to where all of a sudden you're honed into football, you're honed into playing, and you just forget about all the other baloney. I mean, that was the mindset going in, to the playoffs in 2017. Everyone wanted to know, how the heck do you handle this situation? It's like anything else in life. I'm human like everyone else, where all those distractions do affect me at a moment. You can ask my wife. There's times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. And then she's like, all right. And then I'll take a breath and we'll have a conversation about, all right, I know how to home back in. I know how to eliminate the clutter. So I spend time eliminating stuff that shouldn't be in my mind, that I shouldn't focus on. And then I home back into the moment. And I say that to say there's people that'll see this interview say, like kids that are going through that. And it's like, hey, we as professional athletes deal with that, but we might not talk about it all the time. Well, I'm talking about it, and this is how you handle it. You got to eliminate the clutter and just focus on the simple things and try your best to enjoy it, because when you enjoy something, you usually do it better.
I don't know if this guy is going to be a good quarterback the rest of his career. I don't know what he's going to do in Chicago, but boy, he sounds like a great life coach to me. Zach, your thoughts on what Foles just shared?
Yeah, I mean, that is some good advice. I mean, he's a human. He's just like he said, he's an athlete, but he's a human. So things do go through his mind. And I thought that example of the 2017 when Wentz went down and all the criticism, because I mean that Eagles offense was really damn good. I think the game he got hurt was the Rams game, and I want to say that was like a shootout. And yeah, I can only imagine what he had to go through. You know, people are probably doubting him, like, oh, well, Nick Foles. Now the Eagles don't really have a chance. But I mean, you go back to the point of he's got to take it day by day, and I think that's going to be so true, especially in this this offseason that we're in this training camp that we're in, because I mean, you don't have the preseason games. You get the limited reps in training camp, and it might be those intangibles, the meetings, the leadership that Nagy was talking about, how the guys get out of the huddle, which veterans are responding to Foles, which ones are responding to Mitch Trubisky, things like that. I mean, yeah, the play's ultimately going to determine what happens in this quarterback battle, but I think those intangibles are going to have a big impact on it. And to me, so far, Foles is saying the right things. And he does come off like he's a veteran. He knows he's been through this, so he knows what to say. But, I mean, you got to get on the field and you got to prove it. I mean, that's going to be the bottom line.
I bet you get no argument from Cam there.
No, not at all. Believe it or not. Yeah, Nick. I mean, this is Nick Foles, right? Everyone, every single person that has covered him tweets about, oh, Nick Foles the guy is better than Nick Foles the quarterback, and so I'm not surprised. I did appreciate it was a very candid interview. Nick Foles has sort of good comedic deadpan timing in that way. I thought there were I chuckled more than I usually do in Bears press conferences. So I will give him credit for entertaining us on what was a pretty long press conference. I mean, the thing was like 90 minutes or something. So it was an entertaining conversation, which sometimes they're not always. So I'll give him that. But right. I mean, we can only talk in circles about who's the better guy so long before it's time to just, strap on a pad and helmet and hit Allen Robinson correctly.
Our very first press conference with Foles, I think it was it like in March, Cam? I think it was, or April.
It was a while ago.
You remember that he had like a very long last answer that just kept going and going, but it was like there was so much information in that answer. And it was a basic question too. I forgot who asked. I forgot the question was. But it was pretty basic, kind of a run-of-the-mill question, and he just went into depth on that. And it might have been like a 5-6 minute answer. I just remember that clearly.
He's very introspective, and that's nice. As someone who, as people that are required to fill certain amount of spaces online with quotes and content and word counts, Nick Foles is going to help us a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. You guys have gone overtime on our show. I said I'd get you out of here in an hour, and already it's 15 minutes plus. So I've got a couple of last questions for you. And one of them is I want you to kind of clue me in on who you think is ultimately going to be the starting quarterback when the season begins. Hopefully the season begins in 2020. But before we do that, I asked John Buffone, who hosts Buffone 55 here. John, of course, is the nephew of Doug Buffone, who played 15 seasons with the Chicago Bears and wore number 55. And one of the things we do is we ask John to give us a thought on a topic, and he's got 55 seconds to do it. So we asked him to talk about the quarterback situation.
Well, I think conventional reasoning would lead a person to believe that this gives Mitch Trubisky the advantage. Now, he's the incumbent. He knows the receivers. He knows the system, and less preseason games gives Nick Foles less time to dethrone him. But I kind of have a different way of thinking. I think there's very little loyalty owed to Trubisky from the current coaching staff. Foles has a rapport with Lazor. He has a relationship with DiFilippo. Nagy obviously likes him. They pursued him pretty aggressively in free agency. So I'm of the thinking that this coaching staff already trust Nick Foles more than they trust Mitch Trubisky. And I think Mitch needed these preseason games to show that he is a man on a mission, that he is ticked off, that he can go through all of his reads under pressure and move the chains and so forth. So if Foles looks good in camp, I think the offensive coaching staff that already knows him would be more inclined to move forward with him. I think Bears fans would love to see a 25-year-old Mitch Trubisky turn into the franchise guy, but I don't know if the coaching staff and even the GM, for that matter, still have the luxury of patience.
All right, John went a little over his allotted time, but I'm not going to tell him that. You saw how big this guy is. Zach, why don't you go first and tell me what you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think if I had to make a prediction now and where we stand now, I think Foles does have the advantage. And Cam mentioned something a couple answers ago. I mean, they gave up a 4th-round pick and signed him to that contract for a reason. I think, with Cam Newton out there, a guy like Teddy Bridgewater was out there, those could have been pretty much signed as free agents. Even someone like Andy Dalton could have been signed as a free agent. But the Bears went out and traded for Nick Foles, and I think that carries a lot of weight. Now, the preseason games probably impact Mitchell Trubisky the most. I think how motivated he is and all the work he's put in, he has an uphill battle in winning this job. I wouldn't have ruled him out of winning the job if he would have came in preseason and just kind of lit it up and showed, hey, I am the guy. Here's what I've been working on. I'm the starter. I had to lean towards Foles right now. If I had to say I'm probably 60-40 Foles as it stands. I would not rule Trubisky out, though. I think Trubisky does have a shot at winning it, but I know it's a little cliche, and I know a lot of people are saying this. I still think we're going to see both quarterbacks at some point this season if we do have a full 16-game season.
Cam, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I'm glad that Zach and I finally disagreed on one thing, and that's like hour-long talk. I've said this whole time that I think Mitch is going to win it, so I'm just going to double down on that. And, the clip I thought was interesting because it said they don't have any more sort of trust invested in Mitch. I sort of feel the opposite way, just because at any point they could have very easily not made Mitch the starting quarterback. The rumor is that Teddy Bridgewater and the Bears got pretty far before Bridgewater was concerned because the Bears wouldn't just hand him the starting job. I think that's a fair amount of trust in Mitch. There's plenty of evidence if a team wanted to not give him the starting job. It's not like there's still, up in the air about how good Trubisky's been. So I think that the Bears have made, outside of not giving him the 5th year, have made every indication that there's still hope, that they still believe in him. And I ultimately think it's going to be Mitch in week 1. With that said, I think Mitch is going to win the quote-unquote job in camp, and I think Nick Foles is going to start more games this year. That's sort of my line this whole time, so I'm going to stick with that.
And one of the interesting things is that Foles has an opt-out on his contract. So if he goes out and has a good year, then he can elect to go on the open market and go to the highest bidder, which means that potentially he has a good year with the Chicago Bears, but he's not the quarterback in 2021, which leads me to think that the Bears are really in a huge quarterback quandary. I think that what is best for this team, and it's pretty obvious, is that Mitchell Trubisky goes out there, wins the job, plays well, and realizes the promise that he is the franchise quarterback, and he makes the millions that he will probably get because of what we pay quarterbacks in the NFL. Yeah. Complicating things is if neither quarterback plays well, if one quarterback or Nick Foles plays well, and then potentially he leaves. So it's a really difficult situation, and I again cannot believe why Ryan Pace has not taken a chance on a developmental quarterback. Tyler Bray is never going to see a snap in an NFL game unless it's a catastrophe. I think that there's a higher chance of Matt Nagy inserting himself into the game than Tyler Bray. So I can't believe that Ryan Pace has overlooked the quarterback position, and it just is part of the Chicago Bears mantra They finally invest highly in a quarterback, and it's Mitchell Trubisky in a draft where you have Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. And I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, nobody knew anything about Patrick Mahomes. Guess what? He was number one on my quarterback. I would not have taken him with the third overall pick in the draft because I thought all of the quarterbacks were more in that mid first round tier. But I'm on record as saying that Patrick Mahomes has unique talent. You saw it in the college tape. This guy has a mixture of Brett Favre and Harry Houdini and Superman all rolled into one. And I was concerned about his mechanics and that it might take him longer to develop. But I surely thought that he was a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson. And I was a little bit wrong on Watson. I was concerned about his interceptions, and I thought he was much better than Mitchell Trubisky, who I had ranked as a second round pick for the draft. And so again, the history of the Chicago Bears is that they don't invest in the quarterback position wisely. And so we are potentially rewriting history with what is going on. I pray that both of these quarterbacks play well, and that Matt Nagy has to hit himself over the head to make a decision as to who's going to be the quarterback. But right now, I am very worried. Where's your level of worried? And then we'll get you guys out of here. Cam, you first.
It's pretty significant. I do think that there's actually sort of a world where if Nick Foles plays really well and prices himself out of the Bears next year, that's a good thing. I think you could probably ask the Jaguars what, throwing a lot of money at a flash of good play does for you as a team. I'm pretty concerned. I don't think either quarterback is particularly good. The defense is so good that you don't need a Pro Bowl quarterback to, win the NFC North or get into the playoffs. I don't think there's a Super Bowl ceiling on this team. I just don't. I don't. The defense is good, but you sort of need an offense, especially in 2020. So I'm a little concerned, but I had the Bears pegged for 9 wins this year, so I think it's going to be a good year. I'm concerned about the long term for the Bears, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, I'm concerned as well because I think like Cam said, they have a defense that you get to the playoffs and you can kind of see what happens, and they can win you a game or two maybe. But you need an offense. I mean, you're going to need a quarterback that can make plays. And I'm actually more confident in the offensive line figuring it out before the quarterback does. I just think, which quarterback is going to be, when it's the game's on the line and you need this win to stay in the playoff race, or it's a playoff game and the game's on the line, who's going to make that throw? Who's going to have the big game to lead you to the next level? So I'm pretty concerned. I think the long term, I'm even more concerned. Just because, I guess best case scenario is Mitchell Trubisky figures it out and then you franchise tag him next year and hope he does the same thing and then reward him with a contract. I don't know. I don't think they're going to be bad enough. They're kind of a weird spot because I don't think they're going to be bad enough to get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or the kid from North Dakota State. I forgot his name. But yeah, they're kind of just stuck here in, like they have been for years and years and years with this franchise.
Which I think is arguably maybe a worse spot to be in than terrible. Yeah. I think probably the worst spot in the NFL you can be is perpetually 8-8, because that doesn't give you anywhere to go. You just stay perpetually 8-8, and I wrote this earlier when someone said that, that weird prediction that the Bears are going to go 3-12 and everyone just panicked. That wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I do think that the next 2 or 3 years going 8-8, 7-9 is worse for the Bears' development as a franchise than just bombing a season.
It's football hell. I mean, it's literally football hell.
All right, guys, tell us what it is you're working on now so that our fans can follow you. Zach, what do you got coming up over at bearreport.com?
Yeah, so I'm working on something on Nick Foles, saying he feels at home and his comfort level of the offense. I got a couple other things coming out, some film review. And then hopefully, whenever Cam and I are able to go to camp, get some analysis on those practices.
And Zach, you got a podcast too you want to plug?
Yeah. It's just Bear Report Radio. It's just a weekly podcast we do on the Bear Report.
Very good. And Cam, better put your image up.
We got a bunch of stuff at NBC coming up for camp. I think we'll be doing quarterback stuff every day. We got a Matt Nagy coach translator come in. And then we do Under Center podcast twice a week. So you can find all that stuff on our, me, Adam Hogue, Brian Perez, JJ Stankovitz doing a bunch of Bears stuff over at NBC Sports Chicago. So check it out.
Great cast, and thank you very much for spending an hour plus with me talking Chicago Bears football. We'll definitely do this again sometime down the line. Take care, fellas.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
See you later.
All right. What do we have left to do? Is that our show? Are we done? Oh, yeah, I think we're done. No, we've got some more. Obviously, we got a little bit more to talk about. And what I want to do right now is play a couple of ads promoting some of the things that we've got going on. So that way I can run to the washroom, and then we'll address the latest stuff happening at Bears Barroom.
In Lovey's defense, the keys to the defense were the 3 technique and the will linebacker, because that's what they had in Warren, Sapp, and Brooks in Tampa Bay. So he had to have those guys. Well, we didn't have, if you remember the defensive line that we had with Dick and Greg Blosh was the defensive coordinator, we had these big monsters. Yep. 3 out of the 4 guys were Alex Brown was a small guy at about 250, 255, but the other guys were, 350, 375, and 310, between Taylor, Washington, and Daniels. Mm-hmm. We had to totally change the defensive line, and that's the year we took Tommy Harris, but he also said, he had to have a will linebacker. So in my office, there was, the cards for each of the players, and they had their height, weight, and speed. So Lovey comes in, and Lovey didn't know Lance. So he looks at his speed, and he goes, he can't play. Why not? And he had, had a very strong rookie year. Look at the speed. So Lovey, he plays 4.55. He timed 4.78 or 4.77 at the combine. So Lovey, don't worry about it. He plays in the 4.5. He's got great instincts. And that, he goes, okay, I'll trust you. We'll see what happens. And obviously, history is history. Lance was a great linebacker in that scheme. And part of it was his instincts. As good as an instinctive player as I've ever been around.
In 1993, when Chicago Bulls guard John Paxson sunk the series-winning shot in Game 6 of the NBA Finals, Mark Shanowski was there reporting. In 1988, when Michael Jordan beat Dominique Wilkins in what is considered the greatest, most controversial slam dunk duel of all time, David Schuster was there reporting.
What kind of expectations do you set for yourself individually going into your career?
In 2010, when Derrick Rose said,
"Why can't I be the MVP of the league? Why can't I be the best player in the league? I don't see why. Why can't I do that?"
It was Mark Shanowski who asked the question.
It is my distinct honor to present the 2010-2011 NBA Most Valuable Player Award to Derrick Rose of the Chicago Bulls.
In 2011, when Rose accepted the Most Valuable Player award to become the youngest MVP in the history of the league, David Schuster was there reporting. Shanowski, Schuster, 2 of Chicago's most accomplished NBA reporters. This is Sharpshooters.
And, Keith Hernandez was the captain of the team.
A great player and a
full-blooded asshole.
Yeah, he totally was. Anyway, so I had to talk to him to get some tape. So I went over to Keith Hernandez and I very politely said, excuse me, and I was so young at that time, Mr. Hernandez, can I please get a couple of words with you? He looked at me and he, looked up and down, he sees my recorder and he goes, fuck radio. So I guess he doesn't want to talk to me.
And you did a 180 turn.
I did a 180 turn and very quietly I walked away and I said, God, I can't believe he said fuck radio.
Pat and Ron were in the front, and there was a space heater that probably dangled about 2 feet from the ceiling. And when Ronnie stood up for the national anthem, he didn't realize it, and we didn't realize it at the time, but his hairpiece was right on the heater. And it smelled like there was a tire fire somewhere around the ballpark. It actually did start to smoke a little bit. It was, Pat had a cup of water that we put on top of it. And the next thing you know, Ronnie's walking out of the booth, and he goes to the restroom at Shea Stadium and comes back. He tried to put a little water on it, try to make it look good. When he came back, it really looked like Tiger Woods had gone to the practice fairway, taken a 7-iron with a divot, and didn't replace the divot. And that's what it looked like on the top of Ronnie's head.
You think that Ditka should have upgraded the offense, Jimmy? Should he have listened to you more? Because a lot of your scores were audibles off of plays that Mike Ditka had designed, whether they be running or passes that you didn't think would work.
Well, I don't know what the percentage was that I changed or just didn't call, but it was pretty high. Mike, I would have loved to play with Mike Ditka. He was a hell of a football player, great tight end, but he called plays like a tight end. You don't run a play action pass without running the run first, stuff like that. And just different philosophy. I kept telling him, look, we don't need to run Walter into a brick wall all the time. I do understand what the defense is trying to do to us. And if I see a man-to-man coverage, instead of handing the ball to him, why can't I just call a play at the line that I could throw it to him? He's outside all the mess. He's one-on-one with a linebacker. And I can't even imagine or remember one linebacker in the league that could have covered him in the flat or, in a little option route. And we butted heads for 7 years about stuff like that. So, it was difficult, but it was kind of fun too at times.
All right, welcome back. All right, I think a number of you are still on board here because you want to know a little bit about what some of the changes are at the Bears Barroom. And so I'm going to address them, but also not share as much as you probably want to know because I made a pact with Phil and Shane to maintain some privacy on so many of the issues that we've been discussing over the last several weeks. I can tell you this, I think, is that those guys chose to have a representative discuss their future with the Barroom and all of the particular issues with the Barroom. And so when that happened, I thought to myself, well, that's kind of odd. I thought we would probably work out any disagreements and issues between the three of us, but they totally were within their rights to bring somebody in, and that made a lot of sense. During that process, it became clear to me that what was happening is that we had different ideas on the direction for 100 Proof and the network. And I was at first, frankly, I was a little perturbed that somebody else was doing the negotiating on their behalf. But as things went on, I said to myself, you know what, this is actually good because I've wanted them always to look at things from a business perspective. And clearly now with the help of their representative, they were doing so. And so we made some progress on certain things, but there were certain things that we just could not agree on. Bottom line is this. Those guys are incredibly talented content creators, incredibly talented. They are, I'm sure right now, working on what their next move is going to be and how they're going to do it and where it's going to be and so forth. And as soon as I know, I am going to let everyone here know, because you should know where they're going. They're incredibly talented. Shane Marsaw has a razor sharp wit, his passion for Chicago Bears, his ability to engage in debates and keep things interesting. It's a great talent that he has, and one that he has developed over the years, and it's really, really good. I don't have to tell you that Draft Dr. Phil has a very unique, spectacular skill set. I've been in this business earning a check for decades, and it's very difficult to come across somebody with the skill set that Phil has as a Bears analyst. The ability to break down tape, the ability to do so from a Bears fan perspective, and also have legitimacy in terms of his knowledge of football, his ability to create videos. It's improved dramatically from the times that he first started. His ability to create music. He's very, very talented. So he's got this unique skill set, and he and Shane are going to prosper and do things that in 20 years, I'll be saying, I remember when I used to work with those guys. Those guys are awesome. And I really mean that from the bottom of my heart. I want them to succeed. I truly, truly do. What became apparent is that we had differences of opinion on how to succeed here in the network and what was good for us. And so that is cool. That is totally, totally cool. Again, they're going to do really well. And as for Greg Braggs, who was a part of 100 Proof for the last several months, and some of you have noticed that Shy Fans in the stands has not been up, Greg has wonderful opportunities ahead of himself too. He is weighing his options. He is considering staying with the Barroom, and he's weighing some other options that he has. And so I told Greg, you have to do what is best for you and your family, first and foremost. That is the most important thing that you do. Take as long as you want and so forth. If you want to come to the Barroom and do stuff, hey, the door is open. If you want to pursue some other opportunities, I'm going to let people know where you'll be and what you're doing and promote that, because I love Greg so much, and I love Phil, and I love Shane. The most difficult part of all this is that those guys are my friends. There are really, really important parts of my life. For the last several years, we would get together usually on Wednesday, and we would talk before the show many times regarding family. Phil has twin sons, and he's got two beautiful teenage daughters, and I know a little bit about raising teenage daughters. And he's got a gorgeous, smart, hardworking wife. He's got a beautiful family, and we would talk about his family and the challenges. And Shane too. I don't know Ela as well. She's like my wife, wants to be in the background and in private, but everything that Shane has told me about her is that she's such a sensational spirit, such a loving person. And I will never forget him sharing the story of how he met her and how he immediately fell in love with her. That touches me. And his son, Riley, every once in a while you get a special sense about a kid, and Riley is going to be somebody that is going to go on to great success. And Shane's relationship with his father's been ill recently. And I remember telling Shane recently that Shane and his father are big Los Angeles Dodgers fans. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to be rooting for the Dodgers this season, because I'd love to see you and your dad and your son Riley celebrating a baseball victory, and the Dodgers that you love so much. So love these guys. We got to know our families well and so forth. And the reason I share that is because the biggest loss to me personally is the fact that we're not going to have these weekly talks, that we're not going to have 15, 30 minutes before the show starts and then the 3, 4, 5 hours of show of laughing and debating and entertaining you, and then another half hour at least after the show. And so I'm going to miss that dearly with those guys. And I won't miss working 5-hour shows. That is for sure. Let's face it, I'm a lot closer to the end of my career than they are. I mean, they've got 20, 30 years ahead of themselves. I've got 5 years ahead of myself. And so we have different approaches to things. And so they need to go off and do things the way they want to do it. And I know they're going to be successful. I know there's just no question. And if they need any help from me, and ensuring that success, they have it. They're my friends, and that is first and foremost. I care about them. I care about their families. My condolences to the Atoshin family. They lost someone special to them this past week, and I hate to see anybody go through that. This has been an emotional time. I met with many of the barroom representatives this week, and I teared up making the announcement that our negotiations have broken apart and that they're going on. And over the past few weeks, a few days since then, I've reflected on it, and I've come to a better realization that this is actually a good thing for all of us involved. But it has been emotional, and it's been emotional for Greg too. I don't know who cried more at that meeting, Greg or myself, but it's because we have a special bond. And I think a lot of people who loved 100 Proof sensed that bond. We would end the show, almost every show, we would end it, whether it was recorded or when the mics were off, by telling each other that we loved each other. And I still love them despite our differences. And I'm sure that we will get back to that love. A lot of people know they've kidded me and let you guys know that I'm not really good at keeping in touch with people. My mom would confirm that, and other family members and loved ones will confirm that. And so that's part of why I'm emotional about this, because I'm going to lose that constant contact with them. And that was such an important part of my life. But I'm hopeful that we can get to a place where we will have contact, and we will be able to have a little bit of what we were able to have during 100 Proof's heydays. So I've had the comments off. I don't know if anybody, has anything to say, or, I appreciate, I'm reading now some of the comments. I appreciate the fond thoughts and the kind thoughts. And I don't think I have anything else to say other than we are going to continue to work really hard here at the Barroom to earn your time. Your time is precious. And so everything that we turn out, we're going to work really, really hard on it so that you don't say, well, that was a waste of time. And we always welcome your constructive criticism. We are working together as a team to ensure that we get better. And I've got great buy-in from all of the people remaining on the team. And I think that's it. With that, this is the end of 100 Proof, or I should say not 100 Proof. And let me see if I can find my close here. There it is. And I want to say again, thank you very much for watching.